The industry now is not designed for the longevity or of you or the product. It's meant to go bad fast. It's meant to go bad as soon as you get it, so that exactly what you said, you'll go out and buy more, even if you don't even use it. How many people end up buying stuff and then they end up replacing it because it got old? But like my grandma would not do that because she trusted the old can. She knew that a long time ago the can would last quite some time after its expiration date.
Investors could still see some of the strongest price action in gold this year, according to Wells Fargo, which sees signs of a developing rally. Money managers believe we could see inflation reach new levels that we have not seen since the Jimmy Carter era. For centuries, investors around the globe have turned to gold in times of economic uncertainty. Gold supplies have flipped from excessive to deficient, and such times in the past have sparked some of gold's strongest price rallies, unquote. Patriot Gold Group has the no fee for life IRA, where your IRA or 401k can be in physical gold and silver, and you may be eligible for the no fee for life IRA. So go ahead and give the folks at Patriot Gold Group a call to discuss physical gold and silver. And the knowledge that Patriot Gold Group is Consumer Affairs' top-rated gold IRA dealer 5 years in a row from 2016 until present. Click the link in the description box below for more information. And now on with the video. Everywhere you look on the horizon, it seems that we're going to need to be more self-sufficient as we progress down this timeline through 2020. So the more you can get self-sufficient, the better, and in quick fashion. It just seems that the earth changes are here. The what do you call that? Space hurricane above the poles that they've seen for the first time ever. I mean, there's a lot of things that are starting to uptick. The lightning staying glow mode now for seconds after lightning strikes in the sky. There's a lot of things are happening that are moving along the timeline of mass change coming in.
I've been looking through all of these articles for the last 2 weeks, and you bring up mud floods and stuff, and I'm seeing these places that the highways are washed out, and then we're having swarms of earthquakes everywhere. And it's funny to me because every other day they find a new archaeology discovery in Pompeii and Mount Vesuvius and stuff like that. And I keep thinking, is that going to be us in a few years, in 100 years, where they're checking out our culture by looking at a Ford Fiesta under a bunch of ash or something like that? To your other point, though, I've been getting ready for farming. I can't wait this year. I'm going to try to, multiply my output. Last year, I did a minimal effort garden experiment, and it turned out way better than, I thought. We had super amounts of food all year: squash, carrots, onions, etc. This year, I'm concentrating more on staples, potatoes, and stuff like that that'll still be around next winter.
Yeah, that's a good one, and to change the mind frame of when something's abundant during the harvest season or through the year. For example, pumpkins. I love pumpkins. It's one of my favorites. And, those are pretty easy to store for 3, 4, 5 months if you keep them in a cool environment. Going to Lowe's or whatever, Home Depot, and buying some shelving with a space between it, and then getting some sort of fabric there, like jute fabric or something like that, to be able to, even some straw, and put it in there to be able to preserve those pumpkins. Because I've seen people with some really good root cellar style stuff here in Tennessee, where they've been able to keep the pumpkins the entire winter. Like they'll buy 150 pumpkins, back in around Halloween time, and they still have some left over. And what is it now, March? And they still have pumpkins, and they look like they were picked out of the field yesterday. Thinking about the things that come in season that you can dehydrate. If you have any dehydrators, you could freeze dry it if you have one of those, but those machines are a little expensive. Or can it, or whatever you do to it, put it up. We're going to have to start thinking about that, of abundance during the season and storing it and thinking like your grandparents, because all signs for me are food prices are going to increase to the rocket ship moon here. I mean, just in short order, we're going to go to rocket ship prices, along with fuel and food. I mean, those are two things that once these prices rise up, it puts a huge dent into your lifestyle.
Another thing is I've been actually doing that, trying to think like my grandparents in the way that storing stuff. One of them is things like melons. You buy them from the store, and if you don't eat them within a week or so, you get kind of upset because they get soft, they get gross. However, I grew my own, and we kept them inside, and there were melons all the way into the late January just sitting in our fruit bowl that were still solid, barely ripening, that I pulled off the plants at the end of the year. And then the amazing amount of time that my tomatoes stayed without me doing any real precaution. Some people wrap them in a newspaper and put them in the closet. The green ones, you can unwrap them and slowly ripen them all winter long. And I was learning the other day about oiling eggs, and a friend and also some other people that I saw were trying to do this same thing, and they kept failing because people don't realize how long their food is in transit before they get the food actually to their house. Basically, you're getting rotten food from the grocery store already. It's already got a shelf life, and that shelf life is just about over due to just-in-time shipping processes with the food. So when you get eggs from a chicken or from your neighbor or wherever you're getting them from, you can oil those eggs as soon as you get them in. Just put them on the shelf at room temperature, and you have a 9-month stash of protein that's not going to go bad. But I noticed people were trying to do the same thing with store-bought eggs, not realizing they're already 9 months old. So you can't do that with them. It's hard to store stuff from the grocery store, which is either on purpose or just a product of just-in-time shipping. Either way, it doesn't work out for people trying to prep through the box stores. Really, the only way to prep is through organic means or through local means, so that you get the food when it's new, and then you have the time to preserve it, and you also have the natural shelf life of it working to your advantage.
Yeah, let me touch on the eggs there for a second. Living out here in the countryside now, I have been able to find a couple families who have extra chickens, and they sell the eggs on the side. Even 6 months ago, you could get a dozen eggs for like $1.50. Well, the price is pretty much the same. I think it's $1.75 now or $2 because their price has also gone up. But what I noticed about the eggs is they don't wash them when they give them to you. So you're getting them straight out of the coop, straight into you. You got to bring your own container, obviously.
Yeah.
But did you notice the ones in the store, they're completely washed off of that coating that you're talking about, that then you can preserve those for such a long time. And I've also seen some old timers using, I think it was lime in the water, and then putting them in a water bath and then keeping in one of those like mason jugs there, submerged in the water, in the lime water, and the same thing. They didn't have to boil them. They were able to keep them in the liquid form using lime water. That coating that they wash off the eggs is the thing you're talking about that gives you that extra really long shelf life. So I'm going to say absolutely it is a plan to limit the amount of food that you can store, so you're always in that replenishment mode. Because see, my mom's really such a stickler about the go by date, or the dates that they put on the cans, right? Or they put on the bags. Like, she'll throw something away, and you can obviously look at it and see it is still 100% edible, and it's 100% solidly good to eat. And she'll say, well, it's 1 week over this. And we're like, it's Parmesan cheese, really? And well, look, the date's over that, or even 2 weeks for Parmesan cheese. And I'm like, you know what? They aged Parmesan cheese for like 5 years, 10 years. You got to pay a premium if you get 10-year aged Parmesan cheese, right? And she's like, well, it says 3 weeks over the date. That good by date, sell by date, and best by date, they're all three different things, but they confuse people a lot. That was only started in the 1970s to get you to consume more, because they knew in the future at least 15% of the people would do just like my mom does. She looks at the date and is like, oh, it's old. We got to throw it away and get a new one. Because I almost shook my head. I was at the house for like a couple months ago, and she was looking at some vinegar. And she's like, oh, the vinegar's old. It's out of date. The general knowledge of the foods too, like honey, they put good by dates on honey. But they find honey that was used as storage for magic mushrooms in the Hittite society from 5,000 years ago. And whatever was preserved in honey is just as good today as it was 5,000 years ago. So to insult people by putting a good by date on honey or a best by date, or, it's crazy. It's just this whole just-in-time delivery. rotation of consumption, and oh no, it's an existential threat to global warming, yet hey, buy a new car, buy the new electronic appliance, buy this, buy that, hey, we can get it to you, just oh, it's an existential threat. So this whole mixed messaging that we get in society of your life's going to end because it's CO2, and then there's 50,000 advertisements on to buy new stuff, get a new battery, get a new light, get a new this, get a new that, you need a new fridge, you need all this stuff. But then in the very next thing, like, oh, we need to raise your taxes, and everybody needs to stop driving because of global warming. And, you know, it's just a whole farce of a society and show that we're looking at right in front of it. Everything's so fictitious. You hit it on the head there, Ransom. That's such a perfect observation on about the supermarkets.
Yeah. And, you know, we've been doing experiments because my grandmother passed away recently. And I got my inheritance was a bunch of already out of date food that was like, you know, my grandma was still storing it thinking, well, you know, that's good. And then we get it. And a lot of it is good, but then some of it's not. Like, you know, the tomatoey things usually are still good. And then when you get into the acidic things like fruit and other things like that, you find out that you start tasting the can. It starts getting that liner off, that BPA liner that they put in all the cans. So, you know, a long time ago when they canned food, it really would last decades, probably past the expiration date. But the way that they're doing it now, it seems like they're not putting as much effort into actual, you know, safety and longevity of the product. And it's exactly like you said. Actually, I worked a lot in the grocery store industry when I was young. And the meat that you get at the store is also done in the same way, where by the time that the butcher gets it, if you still have a butcher, because most of it's mechanically separated now from plants, but if you still have butchers, by the time they're cutting into it, it's mostly rotten. And believe me, I was a butcher for 10 years. And some of the other things that goes on there. So if you have a real meat source, like a farmer friend or a rancher friend, that's actual protein. And the eggs, you want to get it from people that are growing it in the right way, because if you've ever seen the inside of a chicken house, it's like another planet. It's like walking into Venus or something. The amount of ammonia in the air and stuff. I don't know how actually those birds live in that, but evidently they've been kind of bred and maybe even genetically modified to handle another environment. And they don't even feed them real food in there. They feed them like different powders with different proteins and vitamins and growth hormones in it. So it's like a bizarre, you know, science fiction movie. A lot of people work in chicken houses, so they know what I'm talking about. I went in there one time to fix a wall and dropped some nails out of my bag. And then within seconds, those chickens had devoured every last piece of metal that I dropped on the floor. The whole idea of commercial food, when you really get into it, is completely disgusting. And in my opinion, is slightly designed for, or maybe by accident, because I don't want to put any conspiracy theories out there, but it seems like the industry now is not designed for the longevity or of you or the product. It's meant to go bad fast. It's meant to go bad as soon as you get it, so that exactly what you said, you'll go out and buy more, even if you don't even use it. How many people end up buying stuff and then they end up replacing it because it got old? But like my grandma would not do that because she trusted the old can. She knew that a long time ago, the can would last quite some time after its expiration date.
You know, you brought back a memory when I was a kid, because my grandparents, they had land. And I remember when they said, hey, do you want to go to our friend's house? Because they were raising pigs. And I'd never been in, I wouldn't say commercial at that point, but I think they had about 200 pigs. I'd never been in a house like exact, you know, when I walk in, that ammonia smell, I can remember that it's almost like my nose seized up right when you were telling that story. Because I'd never been, you know, in a place where there'd been hundreds and hundreds of pigs. So chickens and pigs, same thing. I mean, there's an enormous amount of ammonia in there, and, you know, try to vent that stuff out. And it was in the winter, so it was really closed up. Oh, it just knocks you off your feet, that smell. It's unbelievable.
Smells like money to some people, though.
It is. And, you know, I'll say a great thing. You know, the butcher there, I had this it's crazy you're talking about that because I was having a conversation with my closest neighbor because myself and my brother-in-law and she wanted to get half a cow, and she's like, it's a little much for me because it's about 600 pounds of meat. I was like, okay, well, we can go to the butcher and get it done because we do know some butchers. But here's the thing, everything that you're hearing about, so here in East Tennessee, if you want to build a house, it's about 3 years out. The contractors are completely booked up for about 3 years. So you yourself, you could learn all these skills and at least get the rudimentary foundation and put up what could you learn in 3 years in construction? You could build pretty much your own house by that point. But the thing is, they're backed up too. The butchers are completely backed up. Like the guys who were doing deer earlier this year during the season, they were so booked up that they just closed their gate and like, don't even try to drive up to the place. We're saying no, literally saying no. I even had somebody who said, we got so much extra meat this year. Do you think we could just put it in your freezer? Do you want some deer meat? And I was like, yeah, how much do you have? And they go, 100 pounds. And I'm like, okay, I'll take it. But thinking about that too, because the Amish are selling goat now and sheep. So you're buying, it's live weight when you buy it. So you got to take it to the butcher. And by the time they clean everything out, the head, I'm not a fan of boiling the head, but there's somebody here who loves doing the head because a lot of people ate cow tongue when they were growing up. So, to take the skin off the head and get that ready to boil, and then they boil for like, let's say between 12 and 16 hours, on slow boil kind of thing. Live weight, when you buy the thing, it's live weight. So you're going to need to butcher it out. And a lot of people aren't ready for that, Ransom. Following the muscle contours and great. When you get down into the flesh and the real meat of it, no pun intended, but to actually take that animal when it's dead there right in front of you and then start from scratch on removing the hooves, the head, all that kind of stuff, more people aren't used to that. So if you're going to buy a live weight animal, I mean, you're going to take it to the butcher or you're going to do or what? There's so many possibilities, but coming from the farmer directly, I'd like to hear your experience about, butchering and then giving some advice here for people who want to get either a half a cow or a full sheep or a full goat. Because right now they were saying, was a 60-pound sheep or $125 right now. Here, this is East Tennessee, but that's live weight. And they'll drain it and do whatever you want with the blood. Either they'll keep it or they'll give it to you. Because I know a lot of Asian recipes call for like blood pudding. That's a famous one over in England. And a lot of things are used for the blood in different types of recipes and whatnot. So that's about as far as you get with the Amish. Then what? Then you have a full animal in front of you, and they like to save the intestines to make their own sausages and types of things. So it's not like you're going to be wasting a lot of stuff. But for the average person, I mean, that's so far outside the realm of any possibility of even being sane to do that. Can you imagine Johnny, average person in the neighborhood bringing a whole sheep home and then just start gutting that thing in the backyard? Oh, the people would be calling the police and the animal cruelty thing. Oh my gosh. So tell me a little story, Ransom. What about butchering? Give us some tips here on trying to get some bigger animals so you can split it with your friends and family and like 5 people going in on 600 pounds of meat, something like this.
You have a lot of ranchers and stuff that'll do most of that for you. The problem is that the government gets involved. But in reality, something from deer size to goat size, anything that you and maybe one other person can hoist with the meat knife, a sharp butcher's knife, you can cut every piece of meat off of that thing, disembowel it, and take the skin off within 20 minutes. It's an easy thing. The problem is most people have never done that. They don't know anatomy. The whole thing's disgusting to them. It stinks. It's gross. There's no telling what you're going to find. And then on top of that, you got the government kind of involved with you. But the truth is, if you're hunting or raising your own stuff and you're only using it for you and your family, you don't have to worry about the government involvement in the processing issue. There's probably videos on YouTube of somebody skinning and turning it into meat. Real quick technique to slice the meat at the tendon point. Unfortunately, it comes off like butter. It's flesh is a real easy thing to cut. I know that sounds sick, but it is. And the problem is who knows how to preserve it? If you don't have a refrigerator, all of this work and effort is for naught because you can't store it or save it, and you have to eat it immediately. So without power generation, the whole problem comes back around to what do you do in your life literally without electricity or refrigeration? Because that's the Achilles heel of most people in the civilized world today is that they rely on electricity for so many things that they don't really understand how the world works without it. And using the skin, preserving the meat, storing your vegetables, those are all caveman technologies that I have a feeling everyone needs to relearn at this point in time, in my opinion. I mean, I think it's like a really important thing for people not to just take classes on it, but to do real world, what they call experimental archaeology, sometimes finding out what cavemen did. The good part is we have a 10,000 year head start if we use the acquired knowledge we have access to now, which is disappearing quite fast.